Joe Biden has given his farewell address. He's given his farewell address. I'm going to play this address because it's a president that's leaving, and we have a few minutes to do so. This address is 17 minutes. I'm going to play it out. I would do this to any president. So let's play it. I get the sense that a lot of people are going to leave with me playing this, but I'm going to play it because I'm going to give the president his due. I didn't vote for him. I despise him, but I'm at the very least going to let him give his final speech, especially considering Joe Biden is probably not long for this world. This is Joe Biden's farewell address to the nation.
I'm speaking to you tonight from the Oval Office. Before I begin, let me speak to important news from earlier today. After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, by my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas.
By the way, just to interrupt this one more time, I'm sorry. When Joe Biden points out that he was the one that got the deal done, because he's trying to claim this was him. When Netanyahu put out his statement on this and put out his tweet on this, Netanyahu gave credit to Donald Trump. Netanyahu gave credit to Donald Trump. So right here, take a look at this. Today, after many months of intensive diplomacy under the United States, along with Egypt and Qatar, Israel and Hamas have reached a ceasefire and hostage deal. My diplomacy never ceased in these efforts to get the deal done. I will speak more about this soon. Okay. This is Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke this evening with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump and thanked him for his assistance in advancing the release of the hostages and for helping Israel bring an end to the suffering of dozens of hostages and families. Whose name is missing? Joe Biden's. Joe Biden's, right here. Joe Biden's name is missing. So Joe Biden is trying to take credit for something that all of the media give credit to Trump. And Netanyahu himself gives credit to one Donald Trump. Joe Biden is trying to grift. Joe Biden is trying to grift. He wasn't instrumental in this deal. He wouldn't put pressure in order to get a deal done. And now at the end of it, after Donald Trump comes in and does the work, Joe Biden now stands there and tries to take credit. Just great. Just great. So yes, I need to put that in because if he's going to give this farewell speech and he's going to put this nonsense in that he was somehow responsible for it, yeah, that needs to be impeached immediately. So let's go back. I'll let him make his case. Joe Biden's farewell address to the nation.
Elements of which I laid out in great detail in May of this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team and will be largely implemented by the incoming administration. That's why I told my team to keep the incoming administration fully informed, because that's how it should be, working together as Americans.
Again, they weren't working together. Trump's team, or at the very least, Joe Biden backed away, if that's what he wants to mean. But Trump's team went in, pushed for a deal immediately. This was the deal that was on the table that Hamas was agreeing to. But Joe Biden will put no pressure in order to get it done. Trump comes in, immediately puts pressure, it's not even in office yet, and has his advisors and representatives get the deal done. This was not Joe Biden. This was Donald Trump. I feel the need to keep saying that because Genocide Joe had the opportunity to do this deal over the course of the last year. He just wouldn't do it. He wouldn't apply pressure. He wouldn't do anything or use any of the levers that the president had at his disposal to get a deal done. So no, I'm going to keep interrupting when he keeps saying this nonsense because Joe Biden did not get the deal done. It was done under Trump. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm salty about it. All of these people died for no reason.
This will be my final address to you from the American people, from the Oval Office, from this desk as president. And I've been thinking a lot about who we are and maybe more importantly, who we should be. Long ago in New York Harbor, an iron worker installed beam after beam, day after day. He was joined by steel workers, stonemasons, engineers. They built not just a single structure, but a beacon of freedom. The very idea of America was so big, we felt the entire world needed to see. The Statue of Liberty, a gift from France after our Civil War. Like the very idea of America, it was built not by one person, but by many people from every background and from around the world. Like America, the Statue of Liberty is not standing still. Her foot literally steps forward atop a broken chain of human bondage. She's on the march, and she literally moves. She was built to sway back and forth to withstand the fury of stormy weather, to stand the test of time because storms are always coming. She sways a few inches, but she never falls into the current below. An engineering marvel. The Statue of Liberty is also an enduring symbol of the soul of our nation, a soul shaped by forces that bring us together and by forces that pull us apart. And yet, through good times and tough times, we've withstood it all. A nation of pioneers and explorers, of dreamers and doers, of ancestors native to this land, of ancestors who came by force, a nation of immigrants came to build a better life, a nation holding the torch of the most powerful idea ever in the history of the world, that all of us are created equal, that all of us deserve to be treated with dignity, justice, and fairness, that democracy must defend and be defined and be imposed, moved in every way possible. Our rights, our freedoms, our dreams. But we know the idea of America, our institution, our people, our values that uphold it are constantly being tested. Ongoing debates about power and the exercise of power. But whether we lead by the example of our power or the power of our example, whether we show the courage to stand up to the abuse of power or we yield to it. After 50 years at the center of all of this, I know that believing in the idea of America means respecting the institutions that govern a free society, the presidency, the Congress, the courts, a free and independent press, institutions that are rooted, they just not reflect the timeless words, but they echo the words of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Rooted in the timeless words of the Constitution, we the people. Our system of separation of powers, checks and balances, it may not be perfect, but it's maintained our democracy for nearly 250 years, longer than any other nation in history that's ever tried such a bold experiment. In the past 4 years, our democracy has held strong. And every day I've kept my commitment to be president for all Americans through one of the toughest periods in our nation's history. I've had a great partner in Vice President Kamala Harris. It's been the honor of my life to see the resilience of essential workers getting us through a once-in-a-century pandemic, the heroism of service members and first responders keeping us safe, the determination of advocates standing up for our rights and our freedoms instead of losing their jobs to an economic crisis that we inherited. Millions of Americans now have the dignity of work. Millions of entrepreneurs and companies creating new businesses and industries, hiring American workers, using American products. Together, we've launched a new era of American possibilities. One of the greatest modernizations of infrastructure in our entire history, from new roads, bridges, clean water, affordable high-speed internet, for every American. We invented the semiconductor, smaller than the tip of my little finger, and now is bringing those chip factories and those jobs back to America where they belong, creating thousands of jobs. Finally, giving Medicare the power to negotiate low prescription drug prices for millions of seniors. And finally, doing something to protect our children and our families by passing the most significant gun safety law in 30 years and bringing violent crime to a 50-year low, meeting our sacred obligation to over 1 million veterans so far who are exposed to toxic materials, and to their families, providing medical care and education benefits and more for their families. You know, it will take time to feel the full impact of all we've done together. But the seeds are planted, and they'll grow and they'll bloom for decades to come. At home, we've created nearly 17 million new jobs, more than any other single administration, a single term. More people have health care than ever before. And overseas, we've strengthened NATO. Ukraine is still free. And we pulled ahead of our competition with China. And so much more.
See, this is, I'm sorry, I have to intrude on this part. You know, this is where Garland is right. Garland made the point yesterday that Joe Biden, over the course of his time in office, has been amoral to the truth. That it's not so much that it's not even lying. It's not caring one way or the other about whether something was true or whether it was false. He just says it. This notion that Ukraine is now free and that they've somehow benefited Ukraine, have they looked at the news, even U.S. media, on the condition of the Ukrainian military? Hundreds of thousands of desertions, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians dead, hundreds of thousands maimed in this kind of horrific, gruesome fashion. You're getting the territory, more than 25% in the Russian camp, with more being annexed every day, moment by moment, even as Joe Biden speaks, kilometer after kilometer being lost, with Ukrainian after Ukrainian being shot in the face and killed. And now they're trying to get kids to go into the war zone. That is the condition that Joe Biden has left Ukraine, a dying state where there's a question whether Ukraine will even exist. Didn't have to be that way. Istanbul agreements would have resolved it immediately after it happened. The Minsk agreements would have resolved it before it ever took place. The Biden administration was fully against both of those. Hundreds of thousands of people dead as a direct result of this president. That will be his legacy. That will be on his conscience, if he had a conscience. The worst president that we've ever had, full stop. And a prolific liar. A prolific liar. I'm sorry, let's keep going. Oh, by the way, I just want to get this one in. Sparky, you're right. So Rubio and Alderson picked Hegseth, and Lindsey Graham picked, Rubio was an Alderson pick. Hegseth was a Lindsey Graham pick. Hopefully, Trump will shed, S-H-E-D, shed them. And the other fools, someone said that Trump's first administration was a clown car, and this one is a clown bus. Sparky, you're right. I changed the meaning when I got it wrong. Right here, it was a super chat about Rubio and Hegseth pick. You were right. Shed. And we'll see. I hope he does shed those people. I just don't want him to get someone worse. That's just my fear. Spinell, super sticker. Thank you, Spinell. Let's finish Joe Biden's lie-filled, completely delusional final speech.
I'm so proud of how much we've accomplished together for the American people. And I wish the incoming administration success, because I want America to succeed. That's why I've held my duty to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition of power, to ensure we lead by the power of our example. I have no doubt that America is in a position to continue to succeed. That's why my farewell address tonight, I want to warn the country of some things that give me great concern. This is a dangerous concentration, and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. The dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked.
Just think, he's saying this like he's not currently president, or that he hasn't been president over the last 4 years. Do you know how many billionaires was backing Kamala Harris? Kamala Harris raised $1.5 billion in 3 months, and spent it in 3 months and left in debt. But the point I'm getting at is, who do you think gave her that $1.5 billion? It wasn't mom and pops. When they were going to the various people that try to get the money, they were getting the money from billionaires and millionaires. And there were more billionaires backing Kamala Harris than was backing Donald Trump. So yes, there's been a concentration of power in this country. No, you, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, has not been the answer or solution to that concentration of power. Sorry.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America, and we've seen it before. More than a century ago, but the American people stood up to the robber barons back then and busted the trusts. They didn't punish the wealthy, just made the wealthy play by the rules everybody else had to. Workers want rights to earn their fair share. You know, they were dealt into the deal and helped put us on a path to building the largest middle.
I hate to interrupt with this again. I'm sorry. If you remember, Joe Biden, when he first got in office, it was during COVID. And Joe Biden at that time said, these people who have to work are heroes. The people who are working at our convenience stores, who are working at our shopping malls, who are working at our warehouses, these people are heroes. And they're heroes because they weren't working a white collar job where they could stay at home and do that job. Those people had to go in, and those people had to work, and they had to put their bodies on the line to risk potential death from COVID in order to ensure the goods were getting from point A to point B, and that there were people at those stores who could hand those goods over to people and customers when they went to get those goods. Heroes. And what did Joe Biden say? We are going to ensure that these heroes get $15 an hour. That's what we're going to do, because they are indeed heroes. And when Joe Biden gets in office, what does he do? He drops the $15 an hour to the wayside, buries it, and never says anything else about it. He keeps it moving. And he goes to other Republicans and say, hey, I don't think I can get this passed. And they say, yeah, that's right. We don't think you can get it passed. And that was the end of it. They just kept it moving. Even if you want to talk about the child credit that was happening, the what is $300 to moms, that went on for about a year. And then it went belly up because the Democratic Party wasn't willing to fight for it. So on two big issues that would have directly impacted people's wallets, and this, not even talking about inflation, I'm talking about just direct cash money infusion into people's pockets in ways that were real and identifiable. The Biden administration, the one who's talking about a concentration of wealth right here, dropped the ball. If ever they were going to pick the ball up at all. And that doesn't even get to the PRO Act and this inability to back unions, or for that matter, putting a knife in one of the other unions over the course of negotiations that were taking place. Yes, there's a concentration of wealth in this country. And yes, it is an oligarchy. Call it what it is. But don't give me this nonsense that just because Donald Trump is coming in, is going to give all of this money to the wealthy, or that because Elon Musk is a visible artifact, a visible parasite on Trump's ass, that now you're going to make this argument about oligarchy. Just outrageous.
Class the most prosperous century any nation in the world has ever seen. We've got to do that again. The last 4 years, that's exactly what we've done. People should be able to make as much as they can, but play by the same rules, pay their fair share of taxes. So much is at stake. Right now, the existential threat of climate change has never been clearer. Just look across the country, from California to North Carolina. That's why I signed the most significant climate and clean energy law ever in the history of the world. And the rest of the world is trying to model it now. It's working, creating jobs and industries of the future. Now, we've proven we don't have to choose between protecting the environment and growing the economy. We're doing both. The powerful forces want to wield their unchecked influence to eliminate the steps we've taken to tackle the climate crisis, to serve their own interest for power and profit.
As he says this, I want you to think of two things. One, they blew up Nord Stream. Nord Stream was the worst environmental disaster. I don't know in history, but definitely in the modern era. The worst environmental disaster in the modern era. And Joe Biden was responsible for it. He blew up Nord Stream pipeline. So there's that. Two, Europe does not have the energy resources of the United States. And so for Europe to do two things at once, one, eliminate Russian oil, and two, come up with climate change policy simultaneously, they've been destroying their economies. So many of those companies have come to the US because the US has cheaper energy, or those companies have just folded. So in one sense, you've destroyed the European economies based on this kind of environmental policy and the war that you wanted to deal with in regards to Russia. And on the other sense, Nord Stream being destroyed released more methane in one of the worst environmental disasters that we have seen in the modern era. And Joe Biden was responsible for them. Also, we never really take into account the role that military has in environmental devastation with those truckers or tanks and munitions going from point A to point B, burning gasoline as they do it. Yes, this is aggravating to hear. I despise Joe Biden. I despise Joe Biden.
We must not be bullied into sacrificing the future of our children and our grandchildren. We must keep pushing forward and push faster. There's no time to waste. It's also clear that American leadership in technology is an unparalleled source of innovation that can transform lives. We see the same dangers of the concentration of technology, power, and wealth. You know, his farewell address, President Eisenhower spoke of the dangers of the military-industrial complex. He warned us then about, and I quote, the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power, end of quote. 6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech-industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power. Meanwhile,
Joe Biden has put out a litany of lies as an issue of policy. The idea that he is putting this out. So when NBC News came out with the reporting, I've shown this story before, by Ken Delanian, because Ken Delanian thought it was just fantastic. But effectively, Right here. Right here. This. In a break with the past, the US is using intel to fight an info war with Russia, even when the intel isn't rock solid. And Ken Delaney is making it like this was a great thing. It was an attention-grabbing headline around the world. The US officials said they had indications that Russia might be preparing to use chemical agents in Ukraine. President Joe Biden later said it publicly, but 3 US officials told NBC News this week that there's no evidence that Russia has brought any chemical weapons to Ukraine. Right. And the rest of the article effectively goes into how Joe Biden has decided to lie to the American public, basically running a propaganda campaign with this idea of pushing back against Russian disinformation by putting out his own disinformation. It's an astonishing article. And they talk about it in these great euphoric terms, like this is a great display by the presidential power to lie continuously to the American public. That doesn't even touch Russia is trying to take all of Ukraine. Russia is trying to take all of Europe. Vladimir Putin is whatever you want to add into it. I mean, they have had a litany of lies. The Hunter Biden laptop, this idea. My point is that much of the lying has come out of the White House. I understand that people will lie on Twitter and they will make stuff up. Fair enough. I get that. But it's far more dangerous when lies are coming out of the White House. Israel is not trying to starve the Palestinians. Yes, they were. They were absolutely starving the Palestinians to death. Well, Israel believes in a deal. It's Israel's deal. If you remember that lie, Israel has its own deal. Israel has a deal. Why would Israel be against its own deal? They have lied all the way through. So I get a social media company and a platform that is social media, social in and of itself. Yes, we'll have lies. But the lies that come out of the White House or the lies that come out of mainstream media, I would argue, are far more dangerous. 51 intelligence officials said that the laptop was Russian disinformation. Okay, well, that was a lie. And that was a lie that Tony Blinken helped create, because Tony Blinken was the one who went to get those 51 intelligence officials to lie to the American public en masse. Don't give me the stuff about the social media companies are stopping their fact checking. Nobody was fact checking you. When they were using the Ministry of Truth, if you remember Nina Jankowicz, and she was supposed to be the Ministry of Truth, despite the fact that Jankowicz was putting out lie after lie, especially around the Hunter Biden laptop. Yes, I'm a bit salty about this. Let's keep going.
Artificial intelligence is the most consequential technology of our time, perhaps of all time. Nothing offers more profound possibilities and risks for our economy and our security, our society, for humanity. Artificial intelligence even has the potential to help us answer my call to end cancer as we know it. But unless safeguards are in place, AI could spawn new threats to our rights, our way of life, to our privacy, how we work, and how we protect our nation. We must make sure AI is safe and trustworthy and good for all humankind. In the age of AI, it's more important than ever that the people must govern. And as the land of liberty, America, not China, must lead the world in the development of AI. You know, in the years ahead, it'll help to be, it can be up to the president, the presidency, the Congress, the courts, the free press, and the American people to
One last point. TikTok. So if you think about it, not only has the White House been lying, but the removal of TikTok falls in line with this idea of not wanting the American public to get honest and truthful information. And what I mean about this is the reason that they got rid of TikTok is because they didn't like the point of view that Americans was getting about what was happening on the ground in Gaza as Israel was perpetrating its genocide. If you listen to Romney, Rubio, Blinken, many of these other people, the reason that they got rid of TikTok is because they did not like this flat fact that Israel was committing a genocide and that the American public could see that genocide take place on the ground day after day after day. So no, it's not that Joe Biden cares about people getting true information. He just wants information in line with what he wants them to get and the narrative that he wants them to have. This goes back to Hillary Clinton saying they want to put people in jail for repeating information that Hillary Clinton doesn't necessarily like. Joe Biden is the same way. Do we honestly believe that that ministry of truth that Joe Biden was setting up was going to contradict anything that was coming out of Joe Biden's mouth? And if not, meaning if they were not going to ever contradict Joe Biden's lies, the voluminous lies that were coming out of the White House, then how are you a ministry of truth? You're a ministry of narrative. And that narrative is going to change depending upon who's in that office. Joe Biden doesn't care about the truth. Joe Biden cares about his quote unquote truth, which is very different than what's reality. We're almost finished.
Confront these powerful forces. We must reform the tax code, not by giving the biggest tax cuts to billionaires, but by making them begin to pay their fair share. We need to get dark money. That's that hidden funding behind too many campaigns contributions. We need to get it out of our politics.
You mean like the $100 million that Israel has been putting into our races? Is that what you're saying? That dark money that's coming from AIPAC or from some of these other Israeli lobbies, is that what you're saying? That type of money that is flowing into the coffers of Democrats and Republicans, where these guys have minders? Is that the money you're talking about, Joe Biden? He's acting like, golly gee, I was never president. Golly gee, I was never president. You were in office, sir. You're telling me about the stuff that you did fundamentally nothing about, or was never even an issue over the course of your administration. Just outright, like, oh, hey, we should care about the oligarchy, and we have these forces that are working behind the scenes. No, duh. No, duh. It was true when you got in office. It's true when you leave an office. You did nothing about the things that you are now complaining about. In fact, you were just as subservient to those forces, and you literally have been doing everything that you are now complaining about on your way out. You saying this in no way changes your legacy as being Genocide Joe. In no way changes your legacy of being cognitively damaged, a man where they hid that damage over the course of the administration. You, sir, have been the worst president we have ever had. You have gotten hundreds of thousands of people killed in regime change wars, in one war that you just fundamentally lost. And in the other one, what is literally a genocide. If you want to call it genocide a win, okay, you can do that. I'll let you do that. But that's what it is. That is what it is.
We need to enact an 18-year term limit, time and term, for the strongest ethics and the strongest ethics reforms for our Supreme Court. We need to ban members of Congress from trading stock while they're in the Congress. We need to amend the Constitution to make clear that no president is immune from crimes that he or she commits while in office. The president's power is not limited.
But see, therein lies the rub. When the Hur report came out, Hur didn't say that Joe Biden was innocent. He just pointed out that he didn't believe that they could prosecute Joe Biden because he wasn't altogether cognitively there. A well-meaning old man with a poor memory. And Democrats flipped out. Well, I agree with them flipping out because all things being equal, Joe Biden is in office. How are you telling me that you can't prosecute him, but he is still competent enough to run the government? How does both of those things exist simultaneously? No, he is clearly not in his right mind. He is so out of his mind, he can't be prosecuted, but he's still president of the United States. But Joe Biden is sitting here making this argument that presidents aren't immune to prosecution. Yes, sir, looking back at you. Looking at you.
It shouldn't be. And in a democracy, there's another danger to the concentration of power and wealth. It erodes a sense of unity and common purpose. It causes distrust and division. Participating in our democracy becomes exhausting and even disillusioning. People don't feel like they have a fair shot. We have to stay engaged in the process. I know it's frustrating. A fair shot is what makes America America. Everyone's entitled to a fair shot, not a guarantee, but just a fair shot, an even playing field. Going to
All right, my guest is here, so I'm going to end this. This is a maddening final closing speech for Joe Biden, but this is his farewell address to the American public. I played the overwhelming majority of it.